Alright, so now that we're on the roof, there's a lot going on here, so I just wanted to cover this in somewhat of a brief detail. So there's several things to talk about. Obviously the wiring, also the solar panels, also way off over there, plus there's one over here and one right behind me there. Those are WeBoost antennas, so I'm going to talk about them as well. So the very first thing to talk about is that every single solar panel here have been mounted with intent of being eventually removed. As much as I want to be mounting everything permanently, do keep in mind that your average RV is bought and sold every few years. So when you sell your RV or trade it in for another one, a dealer doesn't give you anything extra for the stuff. And I have traded enough of solar panels by buying and selling RVs that I just decided, you know what, it's much easier to have everything removable. And so what I'm doing is I'm using sacrificial mounting brackets. Everything that I have in terms of solar comes from Renogy. They're an American-based company from California. So what they have is they have a typical tilt mounting system, which instead of having your panels tilt that way, I'm actually not using to tilt. I'm using it for a completely different purpose. I'm using it to just secure my panels. And so in case I ever sell this RV, I could just remove everything, leaving the bottom brackets on, and then I just need to order me additional brackets. So everything is screwed into the roof. Also eternal bonded. Also there's a VHB in there, and of course the die core. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot of solar panels here, and it's a total wattage of 1,000 watts between all of this. And it's actually split into two systems running on two separate solar charge controllers. So there's 500 watts in one and 500 watts in another one. And as you can see, my panels are literally all over the place based on where I had space on the roof. And that's just kind of it. All right, now on top of it, I also have my WeBoost antennas. So two of them are for my 4G router modem, and one of them is for WeBoost phone booster. That way I have somewhat of a redundancy system. The phone booster itself, which is a WeBoost 4GX RV, I believe it's called, it just requires one antenna, but my 4G router modem requires two. So that's kind of the reasoning behind it. So all the panels are secured, as I've discussed. All the wiring is equally secured with a Turnabond tape. And then all of that goes into combiner boxes. And combiner boxes don't actually drill through the roof. I don't have any unnecessary holes. They're actually going through fridge vent, any typical sort of mounting configuration. And then, like I said before, there's certain things that are going to be sacrificed even when I sell this RV. I'm going to be able to disconnect the panels using MC4 connectors that they have, and basically leave the wiring in place, including the combiner boxes. Every system that I have here on the roof is wired in parallel. So to keep up with the expectations and kind of limitations of the charge controllers down below, it's limited to 500 watts per system. So there's 500 plus 500, and like I said, it's all parallel. Inside the combiner boxes, all the wiring is combined using household type grounding blocks, so that, you know, all of the positives and negatives sort of go into that, and the voltage is quite adequate for home grounding block system. It's way under the voltage rating. And then all of that goes way down below. So once I get down, I'll show you guys the rest of this. Alright, so now that we're somewhat inside, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I have everything set up here. So first and foremost, if anybody ever installs anything solar, you know, they dread having to drill anything, put extra holes anywhere, mount anything anywhere. So they tend to flush mount, and one of the obvious places that people use is right up against the fridge. Now, I'm not a particular fan of that idea, because once you sell your rig, you're going to be leaving a whole bunch of gaping holes, and the dealers don't particularly like that. So here's my little tip to you guys. Go to Home Depot or go to Lowe's and get yourself a color matching bookshelf. Okay, this is a flush to the wall invisible mount bookshelf. I think it's about $22. They come in like this size and that size. I think this is the biggest one. This is about 30 inches. So what I've done is I put a hole over there, put a hole over there, and over there, and I basically put a giant gaping hole in the back of it. So all the wiring that you're going to see of this solar setup is just those 3 wires, and I've been contemplating hiding them. I may still put something over here, but just don't want to be catching it with my head when I go down. So just to talk about this a little bit, this is an external, again, everything is Renogy, external monitor. So this is for system 1, this is for system 2, and then this over here is for the inverter. Okay, and inverter is kind of interesting how I've chose to wire mine. I hope that what I've done is somewhat of an inspiration to other people as well. But nevertheless, if I ever have to sell this RV, this whole thing comes down as if nothing happened. Okay, so the wiring that goes here, as you see, it goes there. So all you do is just remove this trim. And in my particular case, I put it underneath the couch. So one of the first things I've done is I've actually moved all the batteries from this step over here inside. Okay, now don't freak out, because I have Renogy AGM. They don't off gas. If you have lead acid, obviously keep them over there. But the reason why I moved everything there is because it's easier to temperature regulate, and in the kind of environment where I plan to spend the next several months, everything will be maintained at the same temperature rather than portions of batteries here and there. Now in future, if I ever need to expand my system, I could either continue adding batteries here or there, or if I sell the RV, I could just put the battery back in there, the lead acid battery, and it's like nobody even knows. So if you take a look, it's a little bit messy because I'm in somewhat of a storage situation getting ready for a big trip. But there's, other than this over here, there's no evidence of solar anywhere. Right, so I could basically remove everything in just a couple of minutes. So this is an interesting choice that I have made. People do it differently, and the way I've chose to do it is function over form. Okay, you're not going to see the typical Instagram photo worthy setup here. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about. There's a whole bunch of wires, okay, and everything actually makes sense. So we're going to be talking about this box over there, we're going to be talking about that box over there, we're going to be talking about those wires over there, we're going to be talking about the batteries, of which there's 400 amp hours. We're going to be talking about the circuit breakers, and we're going to be talking about this charge controller and the one sitting in the back. Okay, so everything is Renogy, obviously, as you can see, with the exception of the circuit breakers. So we're going to talk about circuit breakers. If you go to Amazon, you could buy a whole bunch of different circuit breakers, right? Those little marine type with red knobby things. I've gotten through a whole bunch of them, and they kept tripping, and it just kept pissing me off to the point that I wanted to have a more permanent solution. And I've been using this for 4 or 5 years now. So this is a household type circuit breaker rated for 40 amps. Okay, and if you notice, I have two. So the reason why I have two is because I have two systems that come from up on top. So my 1000 watts is split into two, so two 500 watt systems. Each one goes to a circuit breaker. Okay, so I could just disconnect all my solar panels just by flipping those switches. Each one is rated for 40 amps. Now, most of household circuit breakers obviously don't work in a 12 volt application, which is why you need to buy a 12 volt / 120 volt specific circuit breaker. I believe this one is made by a company called Circle D or Circle Square or whatever it's called. Okay, so from each one of those, wiring goes straight into the charge controller, of which I have two. I used to have a different one before that had a Bluetooth module. I did not like that, not one bit. I always felt that Bluetooth is somewhat gimmicky. That's just my personal perception. And again, with all the wiring over here, I could shorten everything. I could clean this up. I just choose not to for one very specific reason. If I ever have to sell this RV, I don't have to buy a whole bunch of expensive wiring all over again. I don't have to rewire anything. I just remove this and I put this into, a new application, and if I have longer wires, that's fine. If I need shorter wires, well, I already have longer wires. So it's just that. Okay, so back to this. Each charge controller, in this particular case, is connected to that over there on the panel. Okay, so that's just my indication of how the batteries are doing and what the solar is doing and everything like that. Okay, everything here is connected to blocks. I have one for positive and one for negative, if you look around here somewhere. Okay, and then all of that is connected to the batteries. If you notice, I have not chosen to use those really thick cables that you see on a lot of installs. Okay, there is good reasoning behind that. Okay, with the exception of those two that are too odd. Okay, the voltage loss and the amperage that I'm running through the system is far below the rating of those wires, and I will never be exceeding this in ways that somebody with, say, battle-born batteries and lithium setup would. Okay, so this is a very specific setup to what I'm doing. Okay, there are several ways to charge my batteries, obviously. One is through the converter, which comes with the RV, obviously, when you plug into the shore. Another one is obviously from the solar, which is 1000 watts total. Okay, another one is right here below. This is DC to DC battery charger. And so how that's connected is the wiring. If you look down that way, the wiring runs all the way to the front into the battery of the vehicle. Okay, it's isolated so it can't backfeed the energy. So what tends to happen is this by itself has switches inside of it. They're called DIP switches. I would actually advise you to do what I did, which is slightly different. On my dash, right underneath the screen, there's a switch. Okay, and what I do is it's a kill switch. It's like a quadruple check for the system, meaning that it never because if the system begins sapping power when you're stationary like I am right now, it will actually kill your battery. So you have to be somewhat careful. What they tell you to do is connect an ignition wire source, which is a thin red wire that goes into your DC to DC charger. And basically, instead of having it connected to a circuit breaker, or not a circuit breaker, like a fuse or something like that, I actually have mine connected to a switch, so it just physically cannot activate unless I flip that switch over there. And the switch lights up. It lets me know if it's on or if it's not on, so it's very easy to kind of keep an eye on. So in theory, I could have a miserable day, and then followed by, you know, an evening or a night or whatever of driving, and I'll be able to just charge this setup even if there is no sun, which is great. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be talking about is the inverter. A lot of people have different ways of setting up their inverters. Okay, I've had inverters on my teardrop trailer, on my travel trailer. I did not have them on my first class CRV. I have a big one on this class CRV. Okay, so this is 3,000 watts. And what's really interesting about this is that this, believe it or not, actually powers entire rig, like everything. It's capable of running everything here, with exception of AC. Okay, and I'm gonna talk about how I chose to set up my AC and why I specifically chose this setup. Okay, so this setup, I could run my microwave over there. Okay, I could run my coffee machines. Oh, little tip here. You know how we all have those outlets that you just can't reach? Okay, here's what you do. Go to Walmart and get yourself 1 foot extension. You're gonna thank me for it. This is like $2 worth. And what you do is you just plug it in, and you could actually make coffee and tea and everything. So I could make coffee, I could make tea, I could obviously make toast, I could run my microwave, okay, I could run my fridge on my solar setup. Not only that, I could run air conditioning. This is a portable air conditioner. Okay, so this actually goes into that window over there. Okay, and there's a bit of a thingamajig associated to it, so I'll cover it in a minute. Okay, so I also can run my dryer. Okay, so we do a lot of hiking, and quite often we get soaked during the hikes, and everything is wet, and you're in a national park and there's no electricity, and you just can't dry anything because it's all humid and everything. So it's very handy to have a dryer. So this particular one is a Panda. I believe it's they go in like 3 different sizes, so this is the medium one, whichever that one is. It's either 0.75 or 1.3 or 0.9, something like that. Okay, so this is the AC. This is by Black & Decker. There's a whole bunch of them on the market. So I've just looked for the biggest one in terms of the rating, but the smallest one in terms of amperage consumption. Now, if you do the engineering math associated with this, my 1,000 watt solar is not going to be able to keep this up 24 hours a day, obviously. Okay. So what I ended up doing, and I don't have it in my RV right now because it's in my house. I'll show it later. It's a aquaponics timer. Okay. And the way that works is it turns the power on for X minutes. It turns it off for X minutes. It turns it on for X minutes. It turns it off for X minutes. Okay, now you might say, well, how is that any different from a typical timer that you would put on like Christmas lights? Well, the Christmas lights and everything like that, they run in 30-minute cycles. If you do this in 30-minute increments, you will never be able to keep up with the requirements. So you could actually run this in 5-minute on, 5-minute off, and still have more than plenty of power in a 24-hour cycle period. And so the way that works is there's this doohickey with that hole over there, and that whole contraption slides into this window over here. So you just move this, you slide the window out of the way, you slide that, and then you move this right on top of it so that it actually holds it into place. And then this entire thing plugs into this outlet over here, and it sits here right in the cabin, and that puppy cools like you wouldn't believe it. For a small space like RV, that way I don't have to run that, which is like 3 or 4 times more power hungry in terms of consumption. Okay, so you might wonder, well, how is it possible that I have this set up if my inverter is here and the outlet for the RV is like way over there? Okay, well, here's the interesting little tidbit. So the way this is set up, this is a inverter. Okay, everything Renogy. By the way, I'm not sponsored by them, in case you're wondering. I just chose them because I believe in Renogy product. So, see this 30 amp cable? Okay, so all this is a 30 amp cable extension that you would plug into the shore power. I cut the leads off of it, I connected it to the inverter. Okay, and you have to obviously follow instructions, not in the outlets, okay, like a lot of people do, which is a big mistake, but actually here to sustained port. Okay, and so there's a wire that goes there. So when you flip this button over here, it actually turns that on. Now, this inverter, if you accidentally flip this, this is not going to do anything. Okay, so I have a system of redundancy. So that cable goes all the way through there, all the way through there, underneath of this, underneath of all of that, underneath of all of this, and then goes out. Okay, now if you walk around your Class C RV, or if you have a travel trailer or something like that, you know the typical door that you have to open outside, and there's a shore power cable. Well, right next to that cable, what I've done is I actually cut the cable and I put a male and a female outlet over there, and then I put a second outlet for this inverter cable. So all I have to do is really just plug it in that same box. I don't have to move the cable, I don't have to drag the cable outside. I could just plug it in the box, and I could actually have this on while I'm driving, while I'm parked. I don't ever have to mess with it. You just connect it, set it, and forget it. Okay, and when you flip the switch, everything that you need to run now operates off the solar and batteries and the whole 9 yards. So another thing to kind of cover is what's happening with those coax cables here. So this is where I'm going to mount my 4G router modem. It's going to sit right there, and those are the 2 coax cables. I live out in the country in the middle of Florida, and I don't have internet, so I am quite accustomed to be using 4G modem. I've been on 4G unlimited internet for a lot of years, and so all I'm doing is I'm just taking that box, moving to and from. So that goes over there. Now my Wii Boost is right over there. Okay, and the antenna for it is actually here, where it's, you know, closer to where I need it. That way I have coverage for my phone when I'm driving, and I have coverage for when I'm working over here. So it's a win-win situation. This is a switch that I was talking about right there. When you flip the switch, the light turns on and it begins sucking power out of the battery over there. All right, so I wanted to show you a couple more things. So this is where I've removed the battery. As you see, there's nothing over there. However, what I've done is I've put in a couple of blocks which allow me to connect all of the stuff that's happening under the couch. Okay, and like I said, I don't have to significantly modify anything. This is all stock wiring, and that's basically it. Now this light over there is actually my which is that over there. This is a part of my TST tire monitoring system. If you don't have one, if you don't know what tire monitoring system is, I don't know which rock you've been living under. It's a must-have for any RV. I don't care if you have travel trailer, if you have anything. It's this stuff over there. It reports on every tire. It's very handy. You just put the computer by the dashboard. It cycles through all the tires. It lets you know what the temperatures and pressures are for everything. And so that's just a booster that's connected to everything. Okay, so here's another little thing that I'm doing at the moment. I had this all wired up. I'm actually rewiring it because I'm, an avid filmmaker and stuff. I have my GoPro and my 360 camera mounted on the roof. So I had a USB charging cable. The cable gone bad, so I ordered it, and delivery company is taking its time. So I removed the old one. Once the new one comes in, it's going to come over there, all through here, around the corner. And then I've actually removed those, but they will be kind of going under and into the cabin. And my camera, I have lots of camera mounting attachments. One up here on the bumper, typical up above over there. So that's where the cables go to keep it charging. And the other benefit of that is obviously I don't have to climb up in there and change out SD cards. I could just connect my laptop to USB cable inside the cabin, copy what I need, erase everything and all that stuff. And that's just removed from that. Let's see what else. Oh, here's another little, I didn't do it. This was actually done by previous owner. At first I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that they've done it, because it caught me so off guard, it's not even funny. It was my first time dumping my tanks from this RV, and I couldn't empty out my black tank to save my life. I pulled the lever and nothing is coming out. I'm like, oh my god, I have blockage and stuff, and I have a whole line of RVs. So I climb underneath the RV, and I kid you not, like, this is where the black tank is. Previous owner, they put let me show you what they've done. They've put that over there. Okay, so this is a secondary pull lever that is on this tank. And I was obviously pissed when I found out, but then it kind of made sense why they did that. It's if this is locked, right, it gives you an advance warning of your tank being full if you're not paying attention to the gauges. So what you could do is walk around the corner, pull the lever, and at least use your bathroom a couple of more times and flush, right? Whereas if you didn't have this, you're SOL, and you have to do the chicken dance all the way to the campground bathroom. So I'm quite impressed with that. So in case I ever change RV, I'm gonna install that on my next RV. And I added that little label over there so that in case I ever sell this, the next person will know. Okay, so one other modification that I've done is install this vent. This is actually quite ingenious, in my opinion. Let me see, is this open? Yeah, it's open. I'll show you. This is really cool. So I have a cat, and as things go, cats need a place to go, right? So I've installed the cat door over there. Okay, so that goes underneath the bed. You know, the bed is over there, obviously. So the cat comes through here. I have the litter box over here, and then I have to do something about the smell. So I've ordered this. This is from United Kingdom. You could find this on Amazon. This is ridiculously expensive. I think it's about $30 or $40. I ordered 3 fans in case this one ever goes bad. Okay, so, and I've also added this mesh so that the cat doesn't get his tail stuck in there. And what I've done is I've actually put this switch, so when you flip this, the fan comes on and takes all the smell out of here right outside. Cutting holes in your brand new to you RV, it's absolutely terrifying. But after doing that, I am so thankful that I've actually done that, because this thing works. So those of you that have pets at least now know what to do. And to find this on Amazon, just type in 12 volt RV wall vent, and you'll see like only a couple. The couple are like your typical fridge vent, but one of them actually looks like that, and I forgot what the brand is, but it's either from Germany or United Kingdom. Okay, so you don't want one that looks like that. You want one that looks like the one that I just showed you. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show here is this setup. Okay, so this particular RV, and I don't know if it's true of newer rigs, on my older RV I had a box, and so if I needed to connect my shore power, I would plug it into the box. But on this one, there's actually a transfer switch that way. Okay, and so the cable would go through here from the ceiling and then through this hole and out. So all I've done is I've cut that cable. I put 2 outlets over here, as you see. Okay, so that way I don't have to completely thread entire cable through the hole. I just drag the cable out, I put the end through the hole, and it takes me 2 seconds instead of 2 minutes. The second thing that I want you to pay attention is the freebie extra wire over there. Okay, so that's the inverter cable that goes all the way from here underneath all of that into the other side. So what I would do in that case is I take this wire that comes from the converter box in RV, and I just connect it to the inverter cable over there. It's as simple as that. Alright, so on to what's happening in the back. So I have a 150cc scooter. So I have a metal scooter rack with a really long ramp that goes out the back. I added an extra tire support because of its skinny tires, and had to cut a couple of pieces off because I was hitting the trim on the scooter itself. On the back of it, and this is actually multi-dimensional. In this case, I'm storing this gas cans empty right now, but for when I'm, you know, on my long distance trips and I need I don't have access to a gas station, I could fill them up, store them over there. So this you could buy at Harbor Freight for 29 bucks. This is ATV storage rack that also you could buy at Harbor Freight Tools. Okay, and then you just strap all of that in. That is 4-inch bumper hitch receiver. You could buy it at Camping World. And then I just moved this way out of the way so that I could still walk behind it and all that stuff. This is the sewer hose. I chose not to store mine in the bumper, but you can. Not that it's that big of a deal. A lot of people actually lose end caps, so what I ended up doing for many years on all of my RVs, drill the hole and just put a screw in there. And what you could do is you could take this screw out and then remove, so you're not screwing that. Screw is there just for holding purposes, so that way you'll never lose this. But what that's good for is you can actually store things in there, whatever fits.